Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, I may be in the dark, but we'll shine a light on Blackouts.
Speaking of being in the dark, let's talk about umpires. But first, a look at the SRBB headlines.
MLB has announced 30 club nominees for the 2020 Roberto Clemente Award. The recognition spotlights a players' contributions both on and off the field, especially their positive interactions in their community.
Minor League Baseball is about to get man-fretted as MLB is poised to take over all minor league operations as of October 1st, 2020.
The 2020 NFL season kicks off this week, starting with the Thursday night game. The Texans versus the Chiefs, led by new part owner of the Kansas City Royals, Patrick Mahomes.
And the Kentucky Derby was held on September 5th. The 146 Run for the Roses had a $3.1 million purse, with $2 million going to the winning thoroughbred. Early favorites were Tiz the Law at 3-5, Honor AP at 5-1, and Authentic at 8-1. Authentic made it to the winner's circle, leading wire to wire, followed by Tiz the Law and Mr. Big News. Honor AP finished fourth. This was trainer Bob Baffert's sixth Derby champion. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. This last week was a tough one in baseball as we lost two legends, Tom Seaver and Lou Brock. Now, when I was a kid growing up, both of those guys were big. They were in the primes of their careers. Lou Brock was the Steals champion. Tom Seaver was Tom Terrific. Never knew what was going to happen when he went out on the mound, but you knew it was going to be pretty good. And then every time Lou Brock got on base, you were pretty sure he was going to steal one. That's why he got the name the Base Burglar. And both these guys shared the same nickname, the franchise. Tom Seaver and the Mets, Lou Brock and the Cardinals. It's odd that these guys both died within the same week because they are tied together. They faced each other more than any other pitcher or hitter in each other's careers. It was 157 times that they faced each other. Lou Brock went 38 for 152, batting .250, hit 10 doubles, 2 triples, and a home run. Famously, at an All-Star game, Lou Brock saw a young Tom Seaver come in and said, "Hey, kid, go get me a Coke." And Seaver said, "You can go get your own Coke. I'm part of the team."
Yeah, Tom Seaver and Lou Brock are legends. Obviously, when they were playing, I was really small, so I don't remember ever seeing them play on the field. But I have heard about them, and to lose both of them in 1 week has really hit the baseball community hard. I really thought it was cool that the Mets all had dirt on their right knee to honor Tom Seaver, because when he pitched, he came so far down onto the mound that he always had dirt on his knee. And then Lou Brock, being the consummate gentleman in the clubhouse, and I think it was Adam Wainwright who said when he first came in the clubhouse at spring training, Lou Brock was there and he had a baseball. He said, "I want you to sign this." And he looked at him and was like, "Why do you want me to sign this? I think it should be the other way around. You signed it for me." And he said, "No, you're going places, kid." Another cool story was with Yadier Molina and Lou Brock, and they talked about stealing bases, and they said, how do you steal a base, or how do you pick somebody off? And both of them at the same time said, "It depends on the pitcher."
Yeah, if he could throw Lou Brock out, or if Lou Brock could steal on Yachty.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, you see a lot of stories about Lou Brock was that there was never a day off. You never saw him in the trainer's room or getting any kind of therapy or anything. He was tough. He went out there. He never took a day off thing. Albert Pujols, who talks a lot about his time with Stan Musial, another Cardinal great, spoke a lot about the impact that Lou had on his career, and that Lou was good about coming to guys and saying, "Hey, you belong here," and encouraging them to be not only great on the field, but off the field as well. He started his career with the Cubs, and when they traded for him, the Cardinals, his new teammates, were not too sure about him, but he helped them win the series in 1964, which was the first time that they'd won one since the late 40s. Lou Brock had an incredible impact not only on the team, but on the city. From 77 until Ricky Henderson broke his record, which it was in 1991. So for that time frame, he was the all-time steals leader. Ricky Henderson, of course, was a whole different stratosphere when it came to stealing another 500 above and beyond what Lou did. I remember watching games, and during the 70s, there weren't a lot of games on TV. So the game of the week was like on Saturday. Maybe your local teams would have televised games on Sunday or other times during the week, but it wasn't a daily thing. There was Monday night baseball. So you had that. Another thing that tied Tom Seaver and Lou Brock together, Tom Seaver's only no-hitter was against St. Louis in 1978 when he was a member of the Reds. Tom Seaver, 311 and 205 over his career, a big part of the Miracle Mets in 1969. And you bringing up the way that he threw and that dirt mark on his knee, if you look at that staff, all of them were like that. If you look at Nolan Ryan through his career, because he too was a member of that staff, and Nolan Ryan, great things to say about Tom Seaver. In fact, a lot of ways he goes, I probably wouldn't be here without Tom Seaver, who was very encouraging, helping him pitch better. But when you look at those guys, they all use their legs to drive the ball. And that had a big impact upon how they pitched and that 69 World Series. And Tom Seaver was a big part of that. Definitely the face of the Mets. Career 2.86 ERA, 3,640 strikeouts through 231 complete games over his career. 21 complete games in 1971. Played for the Mets, the Reds, the Sox, both white and red. And then retired in 1986. And at the time that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1992, he had the highest, almost 99% of the ballots he was named on. Oddly enough, I noticed on the balloting that Nolan Ryan had the exact same percentage, 98.8% of the ballots. So the two battery mates from back in 69. A big loss as far as the legends of baseball, and our condolences go out to both the Brock and the Seaver families. We've reached the 2/3 mark of the season. We're actually a little over that. Over the weekend, most games ever played by the major leagues, 53 games, 21 on Friday alone with all of the doubleheaders. So it's
like 5.
Yeah, not a fan of the 7-inning games unless my team is playing and they win because of the 7th inning being the last inning. Oh, did I mention that the Angels are on a 5-game winning streak and they swept the Asterix?
You haven't,
no,
but I knew you would in the Angel segment.
No, this is big news. This needs to be throughout.
All right. We need to do an alert.
Yes.
Alert.
Alert. So this week we were thinking about, as we go through the season, what are some things that we noticed 2/3 of the way? You figure there's only a couple of weeks left in the season now. And some of the issues that have come up that we've talked about, we've thought about, one of the biggest thing is still, and it becomes a bigger issue for you this week, and it was last week or week before, is blackouts.
Yes, blackouts. I cannot watch Arizona Diamondbacks. They are 6 hours west of me.
And it's not because they're a bad team that you just can't bring yourself to
I just
watch
can't watch them. I literally can't watch them on TV. Can only listen on the radio. I guess I could watch them 90 minutes after the game is over. I get to see the replay. The Colorado Rockies are 6 miles north, and they are blacked out in my area. But the only reason that I get to see them is because of my satellite provider has a regional sports network. And therein lies the problem, regional sports networks.
Right. That's the biggest thing. You can blame the MLB, but the MLB is working with their partners, and the regional sports networks have all said, hey, we have issues with this.
It's interesting, though. If I was looking through and I thought, okay, if I lived in Clovis, New Mexico, which you used to live there as a little kid.
That was when I was an only child.
Yeah. Clovis is blacked out from seeing the Diamondbacks, the Rockies, the Asterix, and the Rangers. And then I thought, okay, I lived in Altus, Oklahoma. You spent a lot of time in Altus, Oklahoma. Astros, Rangers, make sense. The Rangers especially.
The Rangers I get. The Astros are a little far south.
Right. But also Kansas City and St. Louis.
Right. They get
don't make sense to me.
Top and bottom, Missouri and Texas. Okay, so Kansas City maybe because they're closer. The Rangers, maybe. But the Astros are a long ways away, and St. Louis is far enough away. There should be maybe only a 2-team maximum that you can be blacked out from, even if, in fact, it should only be 1 team if you're going to do it. And some of these areas, Montana is fully blacked out for Seattle Mariner games.
As is Alaska.
Right. But in Alaska, you can find games to watch on TV for the Mariners.
That's true.
In Montana, there's one radio station in Kalispell that carries the Mariners games. And I couldn't find any TV across Montana that carried the Mariners games like on a regional sports network, because the Mariners games are on the Northwest Sports Network. Montana's under the Rocky Mountain Sports Network, which to me seems like you would probably get Rockies games there.
Right, which makes more sense that they would probably be Rockies fans.
And the Rockies go up into Wyoming and a little bit into Nebraska, but Montana is all a Mariners place. And I look to see if I'm a Mariners fan and I live in Helena, can I watch the games on? And as far as I can tell, I would have to wait like you for 90 minutes after the game to watch. You know who's really messed up in all of this?
Iowa.
Oh. Connecticut is blacked out for both the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Mets, of course. But think about it, whenever, unless it's on ESPN, which it always is,
right.
If you're a Red Sox fan or a Yankees fan and you live in Connecticut, now I'm assuming they probably have at least one of them, like the Yes Network, which is the Yankees, and maybe in Eastern Connecticut, they get Red Sox games off of their network. But if you wanted to watch them on MLB at bat, or you wouldn't be able to.
No. And I just mentioned Iowa. So if you lived in Iowa, you are blacked out from, and I think they're the winners. Chicago Cubs, the Royals, the Twins, the White Sox, the Brewers, and the Cardinals. So Iowa has been Manfreded. They got a big stamp on their state.
Yeah, but they can watch the Rangers and the Asterix and the Diamondbacks and the Rockies.
True. And I'm sure that's who they really want to watch.
And the Florida teams.
And the Florida teams. And the other thing too is, so I looked at Tucson. Tucson's someplace I like to go. I visited there, especially during February when it's 75 degrees. And okay, the Arizona Diamondbacks make sense, but the San Diego Padres, I don't get that. But maybe I want to be blacked out from the Padres.
Yeah, I noticed that all across southern Arizona, the Padres have all of that. And I would think Arizona would just all have Arizona. Tucson's east of Phoenix.
Right.
And
that's what got me.
You know, I get maybe Yuma because it's right there by the border of Arizona and California, but it doesn't make any sense. The way some of these areas bleed into one another, a lot of them just don't make any sense, especially in areas where blackouts, as far as Major League Baseball is concerned, is that they want to get local fans to go to the game, not just watch them on TV.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, to drive 6 hours each way, it's a little much.
To either team,
right?
Whether it be the Rockies or the Diamondbacks, or it's a plane flight. If you want to go to a Mariners game and you live in Helena, Montana, you're either making that drive across or you're flying.
Right. And the thing I think that got me too is when we were talking about blackouts, or what we were going to talk about this week, is no fans can go to games this season. So couldn't an agreement be made that this one time everybody gets to see baseball? So if you're a cord cutter and you want to subscribe to MLB TV, it's really not a good, unless you live somewhere where you can see your favorite team. For me, for the most part, I can see the Dodgers play, except those few times during the year when they play Arizona. And like I said, I can watch and suffer through the Rockies broadcast. I had to mute them on the other night, but I can still watch them. But the regional sports networks, that's, everyone's trying to make money. And right now, that's why we have blackouts. But YouTube has been offering baseball games, and they actually are going to start, I think, this week with a baseball game of the week on YouTube. They're all in the Central Division, so if you're a Twins fan or a Brewers fan, you're going to be happy. But still, you've got YouTube, or even maybe Amazon could come in and swipe up some baseball, although they might want to show the Seattle Krakens when they start playing hockey. They might be more interested in that.
Well, over the last couple of seasons, they've done that where there's been a YouTube game of the week, or even on Facebook Live, they were doing that. But the only place to watch the game was on that platform. You could watch it on YouTube, or you could watch it on Facebook or whatever. There wasn't like, okay, you can still watch it on your local TV station if it's your team. You're stuck. And what if you're in a place where all you have is TV? You don't have internet access, or you have a bad signal with your data on your phone, or you don't have enough data to watch it on your phone. I know that sounds odd, but we live in a time where we're finding out that not everybody has internet at home as much as we would think they do. They don't. So there's a lot of things, but you're right. The one thing that this season, everybody's been saying, well, it is a weird season. We should just do it. So we'll put a runner on second, or we'll have 7-inning doubleheaders, or all these odd rules that everybody's fine with as long as we get a season in. How come nobody was fine with, hey, no blackouts this season? Because it's an odd season. Because the reason that they said they wanted to go through with the season was that the country needed live sports. And then what do? You still impose restrictions when people might be in a position where all they have, whether it's a cord cutter, whatever the situation is, and they want to watch the game on their tablet. Maybe other people are watching other things in their household, and that's the only way that they can do it. Some places, like I know I can go onto the Fox Sports West app and they're showing the Angels game, but that's their network. If I can't watch it on the TV, I need to leave the house for some reason. I can watch it on my phone or a pad or something. It just doesn't make any sense that in a time when they could be growing the game, you mentioned a few weeks ago about how much the viewership was up. Why not make it easy for everybody when there's a lot of people, that's all they want to watch anyway, is something on their iPad or their phone. They don't have a TV, or they don't want to watch it on TV.
Right, because you've got kids and they're doing stuff, or you might be somewhere. Like there's times where I go to Utah and visit my husband's family, and again, in that little town, Arizona and Colorado are blacked out.
Yeah, they have the same blackouts as you guys in Utah.
Yeah. And I'm the only one who, I want to watch the game. So while everybody else is doing stuff and, I don't know, out looking for rocks and rock hounding, I'm got my phone and I'm watching the Dodger game. So it's odd to me that, especially during this season, why not just open it up? And those poor people in Iowa, that's just really stinks. Like I think most Iowans are probably Cub fans from what I can tell.
Cubs or Cardinals, I think.
Yeah, but they get everything. So even if,
actually, they get nothing.
Right. That's right. They get nothing. So if they were to watch the Cubs, and the Cubs are away, they're in Florida, you still can't watch that. Like they're not even playing in Wrigley Field. You still can't watch that, which that always to me is weird too, because that's another thing that you can't go to those games. But again, it's all about those regional sports networks. Now, I did read that the owners can start to maybe take some leadership in this, and they could actually have their own stream. They could have streaming rights and different, so maybe in the future it could happen with MLB TV. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. So I'm happy with what I get, and I'm glad I don't have to watch only the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees on ESPN. Now, some of the umpires this year need to be blacked out.
Many of the umpires need to be blacked out, starting with Joe West. He had issues at the very beginning with the protocols being put in place for COVID-19 and the season. He believes and has said it outright, this is a hoax. I don't believe in it. He wears a mask because they tell him he has to, but most of the time he takes it off, or he doesn't wear it right, or he doesn't have a mask that fits his face.
I was just going to say, the other day I saw a picture of him. It looked like an ace bandage that he had put across his face. Country Joe West needs to retire.
The reason that he comes up is because the other day, what was it, Nationals? It was the Nationals game, Nationals and Braves. He threw out the general manager of the Nationals, who was 2 decks up in a suite all by himself. Now, initially, it came out that he was thrown out because he wasn't wearing a mask. The GM wasn't wearing a mask, which I saw him at different times with a mask on, with no mask, but he's all alone in an area of the park that's not closed. So I thought, well, that seems kind of strange, especially for Joe West. Why would he throw out somebody who's actually not only socially distanced, but he's not wearing a mask, and he's all for not wearing masks?
Right. You should celebrate it.
But once we got the whole story, like we should always do, find the whole story out. That wasn't why they threw him out.
No, they threw him out because he was yelling from his private suite about balls and strikes, and Joe West did not like that. Umpires do not take kindly to having their calls criticized.
Which I think means we need to go to the robo-umps.
Well, this season, there certainly is a case for robo-umps, because I could tell you the other night when I was watching the Rockies and the Dodgers, there was a call against Charlie Blackmon. I think it was Charlie Blackmon, and he was called out on a strike at the knees. And of course, for me, that's great. We want Charlie Blackmon to be out.
Right.
But the same call for Will Smith, same pitch, almost in the exact same space, that was called a ball. And then the next pitch, Will Smith hit a home run. And because I have the pleasure of listening to Jeff Hewson and Drew Goodman, I got to hear
the Rockies announcers.
The Rockies announcers, they had an earful, and they don't let it go. They hold on to it the whole game.
The thing is, though, is that probably if you look, I remember that pitch because I even thought, wow, that was probably a little low on Blackmon. I missed the pitch that they were talking about with Will Smith. I just saw the home run. I go back and forth between Dodgers and Angels when they're both playing. I understood what they were whining about. You were telling me, I'm watching Dodgers feed.
Right.
But I realized that that's just the way that whole, there's so many borderline pitches. I've talked about it with Mike Trout taking that high strike. It's just above the letters, and if the box isn't always right that they show in the middle of the screen for the strike zone.
Right.
Because when Matt Olson of the A's was batting one day, the box was down, started at his shins and ended at his waist because they didn't adjust. He's so tall, they didn't adjust the box. So a lot of the stuff that if you looked at what went in the box, some of it could have been balls because they were so low, or there was pitches that per the box would have been balls, but they were strikes based on how tall he is because they'd adjust to the person, not to, that's why like if you get down and you crunch down, and like Pete Rose used to crouch down almost in his batting stance, it doesn't change his strike zone. However, it makes it harder on the pitcher to know where to throw. But the strike zone, when you walk up, the umpire is supposed to make a mental note. But there's a lot of that missed calls, and you would think that some of them were maybe it's rookie umpires. But I read a story recently where they're saying, mostly the older umpires make more bad calls.
Yes.
Than the younger ones do.
Well, and I think the older umpires too are they've been doing it for so long that they already have in their mind a set strike zone, or what that's going to be, or they come into the game and if they call a ball a strike or a strike a ball, I think some of it too is, oh, well, I got to stick with this the whole game. I can't correct myself. I've noticed that a lot. Or there are some that will correct themselves, and then that's when you get the craziness of, well, the other guy, that was a strike, but this is a ball. That doesn't make sense. In the Padres-Angels game, there was a call at home plate where, with the batter, he pretended, I think it was Profar.
Yeah, Jurickson Profar.
He acted as though the ball hit his wrist, and he was gunning for the Academy Award. The umpire said it was a foul, but when you looked at the replay, it probably was a ball, I would guess.
It was way inside. It wasn't a strike. Inside. And he didn't offer at it, so it's not like he swung and missed or checked his swing.
So he got a call. It was, he had a strike against him at that point. And so, of course, he was upset, and then he ended up, I think, striking out anyway. But, yeah, it's just odd things. So, yeah, the robo-umpire probably may be closer than we think.
There are issues that are specific to this season, again, that I hadn't thought of until the other day. I was watching a game on MLB Network, and Jacob Stallings, who is one of the catchers for the Pirates, brought a good point up during an interview with the Pirates broadcasters. They asked him, how do you handle your relationship with the umpire, especially like you come to bat, bad call, you're upset about it. Now you've got to come out there and hang out for an inning with them. He said that's usually not too much of a problem, and you watch yourself. You complain when you need to complain. He said one of the bigger problems is that this season you've had some of the umpiring crews kind of stick with a team for 2 or 3 series because it's just easier for travel or for whatever reason, mostly for travel. And he says, and if something happens with the umpires may hold on to it 3 series down. So you're not even playing the same team anymore. And they're still upset about something that happened in another game. Or now that you figured out their strike zone, they adapt it because they realize they've been off. And now you got to deal with that, which opens up a whole lot of other issues.
One of the other umpires that comes to mind, not just Joe West, but Angel Hernandez. And I saw at one point where Joe West and Angel Hernandez were on the same umpiring crew. That would be horrible for both teams.
You're like, let that be a Yankees Red Sox game. Or
Angel Hernandez actually, I don't know, I guess he filed a complaint and said he wasn't getting a good share of the good games. And so now he's a crew chief because he is a crew chief. I still don't get it. And
that's
so he actually called the Nationals and Yankees on opening night, and everybody was upset. The fans, Pedro Martinez, a former pitcher, was livid about the calls, and Dave Martinez, who's the manager for the Nationals, said, we got to do something about Angel. So when you are called out by name as an umpire, because most of the time you don't know their names, but when your name is put in lights, you got a problem.
Especially in bad, that nobody's saying good things about you. Oh, he's a great
Right.
I mean, there have been umpires in the history of the game. I remember during the 70s, there were a lot of umpires. You knew who they were. There were colorful ones, the way they called people out. Some weren't great umpires. There was Eric Gregg, who was a really big guy. He was a very large umpire. Wasn't a great umpire, but he's far better than these guys
Oh
that
yeah,
we've been
and
talking
lots
about,
of
especially
personality.
Hernandez.
Yeah.
But these guys have very thin skin because they threw the GM out who's 2 decks up, but because they could hear him. How many players have been thrown out that were just sitting in the stands because they're chirping about it? Well, they're just fans. Treat them as just fans. They're not part of the game as far as being in the game. If they're sitting over there, chances are they're not going to come into the game. Leave them be. Why are you so thin-skinned? Any other time you'd have all these fans and you're making bad calls, the fans will be writing. You're going to go start throwing fans out, which they can do. They've done it before. It's just ridiculous the way that the umpires have been this year as far as things like that.
Right. But, with the umpires nowadays, you have certain calls can be reviewed. So there is that. And there's been a few where, the call on the field was overturned. And I guess I'd have to go back and look and see what are the percentages, because that would be interesting to look at. That's not something that I looked at this time around. But do we really want to go to a robo umpire? Does it take away the human element of the game where, say, like in 1985, when there was epic pitching duels going on in the World Series, and the base runner for the Royals was called safe against the Cardinals, but he was really out, and then that affected the outcome of the game. And
I think that greater accountability for the umpires keeps robo-umps out of the game. We can go back and look now, especially now with the technology, how many pitches were called incorrectly based on location. They're all cataloged so that we can see what the players are doing. But none of that information is used with the umpires, at least not publicly.
Right. I do think they get critiques.
Yeah, but I don't think they get critiqued to the point that it really makes them better.
Probably not.
And I don't think that their jobs are ever in a spot or necessarily in a spot when it comes to the mechanics of their game. I think that they're covered. Their union, just like the baseball players union is the best in sports, the umpires have a pretty good union too. And that's why you won't ever see criticism of them. And that's why we don't know. MLB doesn't use that same metrics or the same technology with them, at least not publicly. So when you go through and you've got so many bad calls, especially behind the plate, because as you brought up, that one pitch that could have been called a strike, called a ball, and the next pitch was a home run. If that was wrong, that changes the whole game. That is the human element, but we should be able to go back and look, and Angel Hernandez, they should look at his stuff and go, Angel, your calls are 57% incorrect.
They're horrendous.
If you don't bring this back to this level, because there's going to be some bad calls, it's just going to happen. But if you don't get and meet this number, you're out or you're suspended. But they're not doing that as far as I can tell, because Angel Hernandez complained and was made a crew chief. All of MLB complains about him, and not only does he have a job, now he's in charge.
Yes, and I guess you could look at it as being tenured, because if there was a, like you said, okay, here's your critique, you need to do these things better, and they don't, and they get suspended for a game, or they have to retrain. But I think Joe West, Angel Hernandez, I'm sure there's some others that are tenured umpires, and there's nothing we can do about it except complain and get thrown out of the game.
Yeah, watch it. You'll be able to holler something online and he'll throw you out. You can't watch the game anymore. Turn off your TV.
And you didn't have a mask on.
Blacked out now, too.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Well, we've reached that part of the season when we can start calculating magic numbers. Currently, the magic number for the Dodgers to clinch, 14. Now, it could have been 13, maybe even 12. But for some reason, the Dodgers took pity on the Rockies and lost the last 2 games after a 6-game win streak. So let's start with your thoughts on the week that was versus not only the Diamondbacks, but the Rockies. Not a good week for you as far as viewing. It's a blackout week for you.
Is a blackout week. And we've switched because the first series against the Diamondbacks, they won all 3 games. Great series. What more can you say? I mean, I know it's the Diamondbacks, but pitching was good. Alex Wood was activated off the injured list. He came out of the bullpen, faced the Diamondbacks in the 8th inning in the first game that they won 6-3, faced 3 batters, 2 strikeouts, and a line out. His velocities improved, so that was something really good to see with Alex Wood. And they were on a roll. Even JT, Justin Turner, being put on the IL for his hamstring, was like, okay, we can handle this because we've got a lot of depth, can get somebody off the bench. It's okay. Walker Buehler had a good outing, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. That was in the second game. And then it was Kershaw Day for the 3rd game, and he was Kershaw, being Kershaw, 6 innings at 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, no home runs. And he became the 3rd youngest pitcher in MLB history to strike out 2,500 batters
over his career. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. You know, one thing going back to the second game that kind of threw me off, I was looking through. In that game, Will Smith was the only one not to strike out of the Dodgers. It just stood out to me, the big 0 in that column, and everybody else that played had at least 1. So it was a pretty good series for the Dodgers overall. Corey Seager had some big games. CT3, 4 RBIs in that first game. AJ Pollock, most of the team is contributing, and the guys that you expected to do that, Mookie, Corey, especially those 2 guys, AJ Pollock, those they've all been doing it, but they're getting pretty much production across the board. I mean, there's always a game here or a game there where somebody doesn't get a hit, or there could be a game like Matt Beatty striking out 3 times.
Yeah. Well, and during the Arizona series, the first 2 games, Cody Bellinger was out. Luckily, it was just 2 days. It wasn't anything, just some discomfort when he was swinging, but he came back, was in the game on Wednesday, and he's starting to be back to, I wouldn't say Bellinger numbers, but he's contributing.
Right,
which
he's not back to MVP form, but he is coming back to, he doesn't look like his first couple of seasons, but he's not quite back to last season.
And then the Rockies come to town.
Right, the Rockies came to town. First game out, not bad. They took that game. Dustin May started that one. Big night, hits-wise. A lot of players had multi-hit game for that one. Mookie, Corey, Cody, Will Smith, all 2 for 4. Mookie was 2 for 5. 5 home runs that first game. Max Muncy, Will Smith, AJ Pollock, Jock Peterson, which somebody asked me the other day why we said Jocelyn all the time. They didn't get who that was. They hadn't heard early on. So just as a reminder, we called Jock Peterson Jocelyn because of spell check.
Yes, a text that I sent you auto-corrected to Jocelyn, and I didn't realize it when I sent it to you, and it just stuck. So if Jock Peterson hits a home run and we're texting back and forth, it is Jocelyn. And it's funny now because it's in my phone, and if I try to put Jock in there,
it automatically comes up.
It automatically will be Jocelyn because Jock does not exist anymore. It's only Jocelyn.
Even when I'm writing things out and I notice something, I'll just write Jocelyn. Most of them I just write a first name on, but I always write Jocelyn. You know, it's easier to just write Jock, but anyway.
Yeah. Dustin May, another good outing, little over 5 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs. He did give up 2 home runs in this, but this is kind of a slugfest with the Rockies, 2.88 ERA. He has not allowed more than 2 runs in any of his 8 starts this season, and he hasn't allowed more than 3 earned runs in any of his first 12 career starts. So Dustin May is another one that has really, I think, cemented his spot in the rotation. He's shown he can be there and should be there.
And then they went on a losing streak after that. That was the end of the 6-game win streak, dropping game 2 5-2, and then game 3 7-6. Tony Gonsolin got the start in game 2, going 6 innings, gave up 3 hits, 2 home runs, 2 runs were given up. 1 was a home run to Charlie Blackmon. He did strike out 8, though.
He did, and even Tony Gonsolin said Charlie Blackmon, he pretty much had his number. He had kind of figured him out because he had hit the home run, and then later he hit a double. But same time, he has no decisions in all 5 starts. Tony Gonsolin does. When he hasn't thrown more than 84 pitches, he has a no decision. But again, another guy that has been consistent and is looking good for rotation.
He can thank Blake Trinan in that game for not getting a decision. He pitched the requisite a number of innings, but Blake Trinan came in and in a third of an inning gave up 3 hits and 3 runs. Of course, it didn't help either that they didn't hit any home runs that game, which has been a driving force for them. They've won without home runs, but that particular one, they just didn't get a lot of offensive output. Mookie 2 for 4, but nothing really happened beyond that. Next game, a little crazier in game 3 with Julio Urias taking the mound versus Castellani from the Rockies. Both of them went the same amount, 4 1/3 innings. Julio gave up 5 hits. Castellani gave up 6. They both gave up 4 runs. Difference, Julio only gave up 1 home run. Castellani gave up 3 home runs.
Yeah, another not great outing for Julio. I'm not sure what it is. He's just not where we've seen him before. And granted, he's been in the rotation, he's been in the bullpen, but this year he's just not able to get past, it seems like, the 4th inning. Or he gets past the 4th inning and then it kind of falls apart. It's not that his pitch selection is really bad or, he had 6 strikeouts, but there's just something off. And again, you wonder, is it something to do with the season? Did he get enough time to practice for training? I don't know. Or is this just going to be his off season and then he comes back next season and is like super strength? That would be awesome, but I don't know.
We may have seen the best that he has to give. And it's not bad, but it's not spectacular. He's not in that Kershaw range. And that's the one thing when he's not even in Gonsolin or Dustin May range right now.
He's not, no.
He really looks like he's going to become a stripling Alex Wood kind of character where he's going to go, but then eventually fall off. And I think maybe throwing him out of the bullpen might be his best option going forward.
I think so too. In seasons past, he has come out of the bullpen and he looks really good out of the bullpen. He seems more comfortable. When he starts, there's something about him when you're watching him and how he is that he just doesn't look, and again, it could just be the season, but I've seen this other times too, where he just doesn't look settled on the mound. And I think the other thing that's hard maybe for Dodger fans, and I don't know who hyped this up, and I don't know how you could be compared to Fernando Valenzuela. There was still that same hype with Julio, and probably it was unfair because it's Fernando Valenzuela. But yeah, he hasn't lived up to what I think everybody hopes that he would be.
I think that's going to happen to anybody that comes out of an area that shows promise. Imagine if another kid comes out of Millville, New Jersey, they're going to look at him and go, well, he's all right, but he's no Mike Trout.
Yeah.
And a lot of players, look at how many Dominican players, there's tons of them. They finally got to a point where they're not getting the comparison, but there's not as many players from Mexico, let's say, coming in, so that there's still that thing. They're going to be compared to the last great, or they're going to be with the Dodgers. You're compared with Clayton Kershaw. You're compared with Sandy Koufax, Don Drysdale, Fernando. All these guys are, now relievers. Anybody that's a closer will now be compared to Kinley versus just on their own merits or somebody else. The only thing that I know, if I'm a relief pitcher for the Dodgers, is I never want to be compared to Caleb Ferguson.
Poor Caleb. He's looked so much better this season. I mean, it seems a turnaround, because when he would come out of the pen last season, it was to me like, okay, they're going to get a run. They're going to get 2 runs. Now, Caleb Ferguson has allowed a home run in each of his last 3 games. And he always has the look on his face like, what is happening? What is going on? How did that ball get over the fence? And I will say that the bullpen has been used a lot, especially in the last month, because there have been short starts because of Urias, and with only going 4 innings. One start he only went 1 inning, and so then you've got to bring in your relievers, and that does tax them. And the bullpen has allowed runs in each of the last 9 games with a 4.89 ERA. And in the series with the Rockies, the Dodgers bullpen allowed 10 runs in 11 innings, which at the beginning of the season was unheard of. The bullpen was on fire. And we are missing Pedro Baez. He's still rehabbing from a groin injury, but that his coming back looks promising. You also have Joe Kelly, who has been out with shoulder inflammation. He's been throwing. I shouldn't laugh, but it made me laugh, is his velocity is up, but his control is not there, which makes me go back to when he does get back from off of the IL, he has to serve his suspension.
Right.
So there's that.
And we don't know when he's coming back off the IL.
He's supposed to throw this week in a simulated game. Hopefully that will tell. But yeah, as soon as he gets...
maybe back in time for the playoffs.
I think
he's
so.
Not
I
going to be
that's
back
what
in
they're
time
looking at.
for when the Asterisks come in next weekend.
No, and I think that both of those games will be, one will be on ESPN for Sunday Night Baseball, and one will be on Fox. And so I think that they're really counting on ratings and some fireworks going on there. But Joe Kelly will not be part of that, unless he's maybe in the stands and is jawing at him. I don't know how that will work. But not a good week for the Dodgers. For the Rockies,
they lost 2 games.
I know, but
they were on a 6-game winning streak. Why is it not a good week for them? Aren't they still the top team in baseball?
They are, and they have the best record.
I think that
I'm hard on
now
them.
Obviously our perspectives are different, because you're spoiled by the fact that they win so much, and they're off to a great start. So you're looking at that. Me, oh, by the way, did I tell you that the Angels swept the Asterisks?
I had heard that somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it happened. I know that the Dodgers took 2 from them earlier this season, and they have 2 more coming up. But the Angels took 4 games in a row.
Why I'm so frustrated that the Dodgers lost to the Rockies.
2 games.
2 games. But and they even Mookie Betts didn't even play in 1 game, and that was a game that was back and forth, and that was the last game. We needed Mookie. JT wasn't there. We needed JT.
Yeah, they almost won.
But Corey
without
Seager
those
had
guys.
2 home runs
It was
in that game.
Ferguson giving things up.
It was
Kemp,
Ferguson.
former Dodger, helped put a nail in that coffin by hitting a home run.
Yeah, he did. I know it's not as bad. But it's still frustrating when your team loses, especially to the Rockies.
In the Dodgers' favor, coming up this next week, they've got the Diamondbacks again, and that should end their season series.
Yes.
And then, of course, they've got the Asterix coming in. And the Asterix, we don't know how it's going to work for them, but they're going to be playing Oakland, and they've got 5 games this coming week versus the A's because they have to make up for those COVID lost games. So they're going to be playing a lot of games. They've been down, not playing well overall. They just haven't been able to get past things. When you're on it, it's easy to step up and to play better. When you're not, when things start going bad, it just seems like they all do. We'll talk more about them coming up. So let's, before we go to the Angels, let's take a look at the player of the week for the Dodgers.
Well, I do want to mention before we get to the player of the week that the Dodgers Roberto Clemente Award nominee is Justin Turner. It's the 3rd time that he's been nominated for the award, and Justin Turner will say that this award really should go to his wife, but he and his wife Courtney are huge, great in the local community. They have supported homeless veterans, which probably makes Justin Turner, he's a great player, but his affinity and his love for veterans and his support of veterans, that means a lot to me. And they partner with the Dream Center in LA, and this year they expanded their efforts to support the Dream Center's drive-through service by ordering food from local restaurants, which helped local restaurants who couldn't be open or only could have takeout. And then they delivered it to the Dream Center and they distributed it to people who have been impacted. And this June, the Courtney and Justin Turner Food Bank was unveiled at the Dream Center. And because there aren't enough hours in the day, but apparently Justin Turner has time to play and to serve, which is awesome. They also support the patients and families and staff at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. So if there was ever someone who deserved the Roberto Clemente Award, and maybe 3rd time is a charm, it is Justin Turner.
That I agree with. He is a staple in this community out here in LA. Long Beach boy, doing well to serve his community. So
my player of the week, and this time I went through and I did all the stats, and I am going to go with CT3, Chris Taylor. He stepped in. Cody Bellinger was out. He took Cody Bellinger's place. He played center field. I think he played shortstop at one point. He was everywhere, but he was 6 for 18, had 8 RBIs, 1 home run, and a .333 batting average over the series. Just a clutch player, defensively and offensively. So my player of the week goes to CT3, Chris Taylor.
He came up to bat and they were showing his stats. And I said, he's only got 2 home runs. He should have more. And then he hit a home run.
So you should do that more.
Maybe I should do that all the time for all of them.
That's right.
My player of the week played 6 games during the week, went 10 for 23, batting .435. He's got a slugging percentage of .826 just for the week. His overall slugging percentage, .634 on the season. Just so you know, slugging percentage, average counts every hit as the same. Doesn't matter whether you hit a home run or a single. It's just based on how many hits you have based on plate appearances. Slugging percentages takes into account, was it a single, a double, a triple, a home run in its formula. So .826 is a pretty incredible slugging percentage. He's slugging .634 on the season, just to give you an idea that he's really been doing well. 2 home runs on the week, 6 RBIs, walked 3 times, only struck out 5 in that 10 for 23 run. That would be Corey Seager, gets my player of the week. While I thought about CT3 and I thought about AJ Pollock, who also had a good week, Corey has just been on fire lately. And this is exactly what the expectation was for him after his first season, was to be this kind of a player, this kind of a hitter.
Yeah, he was one that I also looked at. I thought Corey, but I went with Chris Taylor, maybe just because he's the fill-in. But Corey Seager is having an MVP year.
Yes.
That last game he had 2 home runs, and yeah, he's looking really good. So good choice.
And see, that's the thing that makes the Dodgers what they are, is that you have 2 former MVPs in the outfield together, mostly between last year with Bellinger, the year before Mookie in Boston. You're having an MVP type season from Mookie, but Corey as well. And right now, I think Corey probably gets the upper hand, even though Mookie has the higher WAR and all that. Corey's coming through consistently. Mookie contributes, but he's not always the driving force. He's just a solid foundation for them to go on. Yeah, there's only one thing that really concerns me about the Dodgers. Angels came into the week not looking great, kind of like all season. Every week I sit down and I try to take notes throughout the week about things that I think about. There was a stat that came out that the Angels have had 112 runs, and it may be more now, but at that point, 112 runs scored against them after 2 outs. That explains a lot about losing.
And their season, yes. That's
right.
Huge.
And then I started trying to look at, as usual, I always try to find, here's some bright spots, because really looking at the week, going into the week, the Angels had the Padres, and then they had the Asterix. And while the Asterix have been having issues, they're still a formidable team. And of course, we know what the Padres are. The other day, I heard Aerosmith's song, Train Kept a Rollin'. And my first thought was the Padres, was that they just keep pounding.
That's it. Slam Diego seems to be a fitting name.
So I got to thinking about it a little more, and I realized that, like Andrelton Simmons, Simba, since the 21st of August, around the time he came back, is hitting around 400. He's been very consistent game after game. There's been so few players step up every game, especially with David Fletcher being on the injured list, which now I got to wonder about that, and I'll tell you why in a second. I got to thinking, and I thought about it last week, but I didn't bring it up, is that maybe the Angels have a curse, like the Red Sox, curse of Bambino. The Cubs had that curse. What was it? Something about a goat?
Yes, a guy wanted to bring a goat to a game.
Right, and so they had that curse. I've realized that the Angels, and see, this is the bad thing about winning a World Series. Now you know that it can be done. You expect it more often. And after that, there were a lot of years of playoff teams winning the division even, but they just couldn't make it out of the first or second round of the playoffs. And we know that since Mike Trout's been a part of the team, there's been no playoff wins.
Right.
Not a single win. And last time we were in the playoffs was 2014. So I got to thinking that ever since they changed the name from Anaheim Angels to Los Angeles, they've just gone downhill. And maybe that's the curse of Los Angeles. I
think you are onto something there, because it doesn't make sense to me that they are the Los Angeles Angels.
Well, it makes sense. It makes sense in a historical way that the Angels were in Los Angeles playing in LA as a Pacific Coast League team long before the Dodgers showed up.
I get that. Yes.
And when they were granted the franchise, they were in LA. The problem is the Dodgers came in as the first major league team and were not willing to share the market. And that's fine. I get it. But a lot of people, I went to a game and I had my Angels LA hat on, and people thought I was just wearing an alternate type hat. And then I had to give them a history lesson about the fact that the Angels were the original LA baseball team. And it wasn't until later that Gene Autry realized they weren't going to make any headway in LA with the way that the Dodgers were marketing and their strategy. And they were just very headstrong about not wanting to share the market with the Angels. So they moved to Anaheim, became the California Angels.
That's my favorite.
And then I got to thinking about that too, because I've always thought maybe they should go back to being the California Angels. That's what I grew up with.
Right.
But I realized they've won one World Series as the Anaheim Angels. So
That settles
maybe the other thing we need to think about too is that the ownership when the Angels won the World Series was Disney. So everybody loved Artie Moreno because when he came in and bought the team, he lowered beer prices. That was the big thing.
I guess for me, if I was an Angels fan and I don't drink beer, so that doesn't matter. So I say go back to Disney, raise the beer prices, get a World Series.
Change your name back to Anaheim.
And yes, that 3 things you have to do.
So, of course, through all of those thoughts, then something that's bound to happen happened. Remember I told you I was on the Angels diet? I'd lost like 50 pounds because they're not winning. I'm gaining it all back right now because the Angels swept the Asterix.
Tell me again.
The Angels swept the Asterix. It doesn't even matter how they did it. It's just the fact that they did it. But let's go. They started the week off with San Diego. And like I said, that train keeps rolling all night long. And really, they split the series. It was a 2-game series. They split it. They lost the first one, picked up a win on the second one, and did something that only the Dodgers have done to the Padres. They shut them out.
That's right.
In the first game, though, they played well. It was Julio Teheran versus Denilson Lamet. Julio pitched okay. It wasn't his fault that the Angels lost 11-4. He threw 5 innings, gave up 3 hits, a home run, struck out 2. Lamet, 6 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 home run. Moreland and Castro, new pickups for him from the trade deadline, both contributed in this.
Jason Castro started off that, what was it, an 8-run 8th inning? And maybe he had some insider
He hit a double. He hit a double there. Yeah, I thought that too. He knew what was coming.
Yeah.
The problem wasn't Julio Teheran. It was the bullpen, which completely imploded. Ty Buttrey, who's overall been pretty good, actually has been kind of the closer lately. 3 runs given up. Hansel Robles, 3 runs given up. Noe Ramirez gave up 2 runs of his own, and then he actually inherited the 3 runs that are attributed to Robles. They all scored under Noe Ramirez. So he basically gave up 5 runs, just was only charged for 2 of them. And that was 8-run. It was 3-3 going into the 8th. 6 of those runs scored after 2 outs. So here's a game that could have very well been close and maybe a win and a 6-game win streak instead of only a 5. But that was the end of the losing way, because then the 5-game winning streak, something that happened. It hasn't happened this year. The Angels shut out the Padres. And
Mike Clevenger made his Padres debut on the mound.
He did. And he threw 6 innings, gave up 7 hits, gave up 2 runs, gave up both of the runs, 2 Ks. He didn't look bad. The thing was, Andrew Heaney looked better. Heaney, 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, gave up no runs, struck out 6.
117 pitches, which is a career high for him.
Yeah. And those are the things we want to see. The only other guy who could throw that many was Dylan Bundy, who had a great outing against the Asterix. So that was a great game. You're happy to see it. It was low scoring, but you didn't care because the Angels won. And they held the lead. They got it and they held it, which is something they've had issues with. Normally they give up a bunch of runs at the beginning and then have to work their way back. And a lot of times they can't make that happen.
Yeah, Mike Myers and Felix Pena each threw shutout innings. And this was Pena's 2nd career save and his 1st since 2016. So that's really good out of the bullpen for the Angels.
Thanks for talking about the only positives in this last week for Felix Pena.
Well, I always do that for the Angels. Always find the positive and the bright side.
Well, this time you don't have to, because the Angels swept the Asterix 4 games. It's like the first time since like 2016 that they've swept them.
2014.
2014. See, I knew it was longer.
And it was their first 4-game sweep of any club since doing it against the Mariners in August of 2017. Go ahead.
So, game 1, Zennings. Angels pick up the win 6-5. Bundy throws 7 innings. Now, here's the cool thing about that game. Not only did we get the win, Trout hit his 299th home run, which tied Tim Salmon for the all-time Angels record. So home runs as an Angel, 299. Had a good game, 2 for 3, walked 3 times in that game. But Dylan Bundy threw 100 pitches, gave up 6 hits, 2 earned runs. The fun part was in the 4th inning, they had somebody up throwing in the bullpen. And you see him, he's struggling a little bit for a second or two there in the 4th inning. And he looks out and he sees somebody warming up in the bullpen, and he starts talking to himself or talking about something. You can tell he's not happy about that. So he continues to pitch, gets out of the inning. There was issues going on, had a couple guys on base. And as he's walking off the mound, he's like, yeah, you can sit down. And he kind of waves his hand at him like, you're not coming in. This is my game. Ends up going 7 innings, which is interesting because in the pregame interview with Mark Kubica and Joe Madden said Bundy's going to go out there and give us another 7 because he's consistently thrown around 7 innings. And sure enough, he did. And they ended up taking in innings the 6-5 win. The problem was that Ty Buttrey comes in, gives up 3 runs, and then Andres, wanting, I guess, a win, blew the save, and then the Angels come back and win it in innings, so he gets the win. And then Jared Walsh hit his first home run of the season. Game 2, another great game and another tight game. Lots of runs scored. That's what I'm saying. The Asterisks are not to be trifled with, even without Altuve and Bregman, who were not in the lineup at all. And issues, with some of the other players. They couldn't stop. Tucker had a great series. Canning didn't pitch as well as he did the last time. Not bad. 4 innings pitched, gave up 4 runs. 4 hits, one of those being a home run. He looked better than what his numbers sounded overall. I didn't feel like, oh my God, you're blowing it. But Luke Bard and Felix Pena combined to give up 5 earned runs. So the 9 runs, most of them came from the bullpen. It was a big night. Not only did they win 10-9, but Mike Trout broke the record, hit his 300th home run of his career, one of the fastest to do it. And, of course, now the Angels' all-time leader in just 10 seasons, which I meant to bring up with the Dodgers. Justin Turner hit his 10-year mark. So now he's eligible to be voted for the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he'll make Baseball Hall of Fame, but he'll definitely make Human Hall of Fame for all the work that he does.
Yeah.
So another great game overall. Justin Upton, 3 for 4. He had a 2 for 4 game versus the Padres. So Justin Upton definitely doing his thing. Here's the one, and that was really another 1-run game. Game 3, 7-6. Dylan Peters, I think his Instagram or his Twitter handle is Dilly Pickles. I saw him pitch last season. I'm not convinced he'll ever be ready to be a starter. Maybe they can work him into another role, but I'm not seeing it. But in this game, it was the makeup for a game lost in Houston. So it's the second game of a doubleheader. And this is the games, these 2 doubleheader games are games that made me appreciate 7-inning games. Because if your team is winning at the 7th inning and you don't have to go any farther, then you're like, oh, God, thanks. That was only 7 innings. We win. So in game 3, it was only 7 innings. You knew it would be a little quicker. Peters only threw 1 2/3 innings, gave up 3 hits, 4 runs. 2 of those were home runs.
And his ERA is 16. Ugh.
Yeah, but at least he's not like Suarez in 38.
True. That is true.
In this one, though, Noe Ramirez, Ty Buttrey came in, gave up no runs. Pujols 2 for 3 with a walk. But here's the funny part. It's the 7th inning, so it's the last inning of a doubleheader. And the Angels are down. I think it was 6-4. Yeah, 6-4. Anthony Rendon comes up and hits a 3-run homer. Now remember, this is the 7th inning. I throw my hands in the air. Yeah. Victor Rojas, the TV announcer, the play-by-play guy, goes, walk-off for Anthony. Oh, wait. Because this is a makeup game from a game in Houston. Houston's the home team for this game.
Oh,
this
no.
is the top of the 7th inning.
Oh.
Everybody, the players, the Asterix players were getting ready to walk off the field.
Nobody should
and
have
the
told
umpire had to say, no, it's not over.
You get to bat.
You still have, and there's not 3 outs yet. So that was the funny part of all that. Anthony Rendon, though, had a couple of home runs over this series. Jaime Barria pitched game 4 on Sunday. Fairly decent, not as good as the last one, but fairly decent. Felix Pena looked bad again, gave up a home run, 2 runs, didn't get any outs. And like I said, Rendon had another home run on that day. Adele even 2 for 4. So the Angels swept the Asterix 4 games. The Angels looked really good. This is what we were looking for them to be able to come back from behind, which they hadn't been doing, and to hold the leads. Because what they normally would have done is they would have got the lead in the 7th and then given it up in the bottom of the 7th. Or in the past, they would have given it up in the 6th, and then it just wouldn't have worked out for them. They played, even with the issues, we still had bullpen issues. We had guys stepping up and playing better baseball and hitting in spots where they weren't hitting before. The other thing that helped us was Mike Trout's at home, where he's batting like a million at home. He's over 300, really. And, most of his success has been home. On the road, he's batting like 230. He's not doing well on the road. I'm almost like, let's just leave him. The Angels traveled to Texas and then on to Colorado this week. And one thing that works for them is the Rangers are having a lot of issues. Lance Lynn has been losing streak. Chu got injured. So hopefully they can keep that on, because last time they got swept by the Rangers. It could be good for them, but honestly, I was feeling like just leave Trout at home because he doesn't help us on the road.
This series against the Angels, obviously there were home runs, the big one being Mike Trout's 300, but they played a lot of small ball. And like you said, they got hits where they needed them. A single, a double, got on base. Jared Walsh helped in that. Max Stassi is back off the IL. He was part of that. And that's the thing is, you look at the Dodgers, and yes, the Dodgers play a lot. They hit a lot of home runs. But gotta play small ball. You gotta, I always, when I'm sitting here watching the game, I'm like, base hit scores a run, if there's somebody on. And it's like, just give me a base hit. Now, if it's a home run, that's still a base hit, but just give me a single, just a double, something.
Well, it's what I always, I stole from Rex Hudler, who was the Angels color guy now with Kansas City. He'd always say, all we need is a lousy single.
That's it. That's all you need.
And we got a lot of those base hit, a couple of homers where we needed them, some decent base running, which had been an issue the first game of the doubleheader, but the second game of the series, only Jared Walsh and Anthony Bimboom went without hits in that game. So there's more of a balanced attack. The guys are stepping up. Rendon, Andrelton Simmons, like I said, being a big part of that, and overcoming the bullpen's problems and even overcoming starting pitching issues. And that's what, when this team was built, that was one of the things. Offensively, it should be hard to beat them based on the firepower. The pitching, like I said, you could score 10 runs, but if you give up 12, you're never going to win. That's what we saw this week, was them coming in, playing tight, and stepping up. And you think about it, of the 4 games, 3 of them were 1-run games.
Right, yeah.
So before we get to the player of the week, Mike Trout is the Angels representative for the Roberto Clemente Award. And he has a similarity to Justin Turner in that very big on like children's hospitals. He goes to the Orange County version. He does a lot in New Jersey as well, from his hometown area in that region. Mike Trout has been nominated for this before. One of the big things has been not only what a lot of the players, when you read that were nominated, giving money to areas for COVID relief, food banks, things like that, where there were a lot of issues, helping small businesses and people who are going hungry, especially with like the school lunch programs and that were shut down or possibly shuttered because of no school. Those were kept up because of a lot of players were contributing to that. Mike Trout's biggest thing this year was a program that he and his wife Jessica started called Your Game Isn't Over Yet, and it addresses suicide and mental health awareness. Jessica's brother Aaron, which is new baby Trout's middle name.
Yeah, I was going to say Bat's middle name.
Yep, Bat's middle name is Aaron, in honor of her brother. Committed suicide. They've given a lot of money. If you ever watch an Angels game, they have a couple of big banners out there that are connected to the Your Game Isn't Over Yet. And they're really trying to push that, which is a big thing, especially when you look at like the homeless population. There's a lot of mental illness there. We know too, suicide awareness is a big thing, especially when it comes to veterans. You hear that a lot. They made it through some of the worst things in their life, and it turned out coming back home turned out to be worse than what they faced in Afghanistan, Vietnam, any place that a lot of these guys were. He is the Roberto Clemente nominee from the Angels, and a lot of great work that he's done. And he's like Justin Turner. He doesn't like to call out any attention to what he does, especially working with the kids. You don't usually see photos or things about it until well after the visits, because they don't want it to be about them. They want it to be about the kids or about the cause.
Two great humanitarians in their own right.
They cover Southern California well between the two of them.
They do.
Well, as Justin Turner said during one of the Zoom meetings during the off time, when they were talking about the Michael Jordan ESPN documentary, somebody said, yeah, be like, he said, yeah, I want to be like Mike. Justin Turner said that. And then everybody just kind of laughed and he goes, Mike Trout.
That's right. That was a great line.
So, all right. So let's take a look at the player of the week. Who do you have?
I went with Andrelton Simmons. I like it, Simba. We have familiarity. We both went to Western Oklahoma State College. He is 8 for 17, 4 RBIs. He's hitting 471. And not only did he do that offensively, he had a great defensive throw where he threw 60 feet. It was crazy. He was like behind, and it was like a circus act. And I have to find the video of it. I was very impressed. But that is my player of the week.
Nice. My player of the week. Yeah, they got to be excited about these things. I knew that this was a possibility going in. It just wasn't happening. And the things that weren't going wrong weren't just simply, we just don't have great personnel. It was, we have great personnel, and it's so frustrating that they're not hitting, especially with runners in scoring positions, or they're giving up all these runs with 2 outs. Those were the frustrating parts. When we can get past a bad bullpen outing by any of the pitchers or a bad start offensively, that's a good thing. So I looked at it, and I had a couple of players that I thought about. Simba was one. Andrew Heaney, 2 great starts in a row. And this last one was he was very Dylan Bundy-like in his start. But I instead, with the exception of the bullpen, give the team my player of the week. They went 49 for 157 for a 312 team batting average. Out of these 6 games, they only left 34 on base, which is unusual. They normally leave a lot more. 10 doubles, 7 home runs, 24 walks. And then, of course, Dylan Bundy and Andrew Heaney had awesome starts for both of them. And they overcame a lot of the things that have been frustrating all season long.
I want to mention Justin Upton. I know you mentioned him, but he's batting .429. He's 12 for 28 with 2 homers, 3 doubles, 9 RBIs, and 8 runs in his last 8 games. He went from a .92 batting average on August 25th to a 192. So for Justin Upton, it can only go up.
Let's hope. he's been awesome. He and Simba have been awesome. And talking about Andrelton Simmons, Joe Madden came out and said, I hope he resigns.
I hope so too. He needs to be in the Angels uniform for a long time. But I like your player of the week because when the team is running on all cylinders, they are just gelling like the Angels did, especially in these last 5 games. Who else can you pick? You got to pick everybody.
Right. And the only thing that I look at all this, and all this is happening, number one, the 3 guys we traded away, which Blanca's still very sad about. Bry, especially when they're doing bad. She goes, well, if we're going to play bad, might as well kept Bry. Bry was doing good. Brian Goodwin. The one thing that I looked at is who have we talked about being pretty much the MVP for most of the season for the Angels? David Fletcher.
And he's on the IL.
And he missed all of this.
Imagine what could have happened if he was in the lineup too.
I think he would have done well, but don't you look at it being a superstitious person that you are?
Yes. He can never play another game.
No, not till they go on a losing streak. Then you bring him back in to hope you can change it. But when you look at everything, he's been contributing consistently, and they couldn't do anything. He leaves. Maybe everybody said, we got to pick it up for Fletch because he's not here to do it for us. It's like in the NBA. There's certain players when they get the ball, and I think I blame this on Michael Jordan, but when they get the ball, everybody just stops to watch them play. So now 5 guys can guard 1. Well, maybe that's what's happening here with like Mike Trout. Everybody stops, figures Mike Trout's going to hit some home runs and go, 6 for 6 in a ball game, and he'll carry us. Only, any one player can do a lot, but they can't usually carry the whole thing every game, even in a 60-game series. It's that mystical, magical time of the show where we take a look around the league. And we'll start off in the East, where celebration would have been big had fans been there. But in Baltimore, they honored Cal Ripken Jr., came out and threw out the first pitch on the 25th anniversary of his record-breaking 2,131st game, breaking Lou Gehrig's record for the most games played. Threw out the first pitch to his son. Of course, Cal Ripken ended up with 2,632 games. Definitely not going to ever see anybody reach close to that again, I don't believe.
I don't think so.
It's a rarity that players play 162 games now. There are a few, but it's not common. The Orioles are playing that up and down game. They're still in contention and could still make the playoffs. Before we talk about the Yankees fading, which I guess I just talked about it, Aroldis Chapman only gets 3 games for actually throwing at somebody's head. It didn't look like a control problem on that. It acts like he threw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball at the head of a Tampa Bay Ray. And he only gets 3 games.
Only 3 games, even though he is a repeat offender. And Joe Kelly, in an interview, said maybe he only got 3 because I'm a repeat offender. But we all know Aroldis Chapman is also a repeat offender.
What Joe Kelly and the rest of us seem to miss is that Aroldis Chapman throws at your head at 100 miles an hour and just looks at everything like it's just any other pitch.
Yeah,
Joe
and he
Kelly
said
got 3 games for throwing at the heads. Oh, and he threw at 2 heads. So that was 6, 1 per. Just like when you get sentenced to so many counts of something and they sentence you per count, he had the same thing. He got 3 for one, 3 for the other, and 2 for being for the taunting, for the pouty lip. Pouty lips are worth 2 games.
They must be, because Aroldis Chapman, you're right. He just throws it and like, oh, yeah, I didn't mean anything by that. I just threw this.
He doesn't come at you. He doesn't stare you down. He doesn't
I think
do
he
that.
Smiles at you.
Probably. Like, who's in control?
Yeah, I'm not. He has appealed his suspension of 3 games. In the statement, the MLB explained that the reason his penalty for the 3 games was that Chapman has previously been disciplined in his career for intentionally throwing at the head area. So he automatically should have gotten 12 games or 8 games.
He should have at least got
Yeah.
the 8
He should have
because
gotten
he's a
8.
repeat offender as well. And how many
Yes.
times did the 3 strikes rule apply in baseball?
I was wondering that too. So he has appealed. Both managers were suspended for a game, but Kevin Cash, he was really mad. And he said after the game, the last thing that he's going to say is he's got a whole bleep stable full of guys and they throw 90 miles an hour.
98 miles an hour.
Sorry. 98 miles an hour, period. So was that a threat? I don't know. We'll have to find out. They're done in their series
Right,
with the Yankees.
The next game that they played, nothing happened. It was a quiet series, and they're done until potentially the playoffs, which the Yankees are increasingly look like they're not interested in because they've been falling, and we know they've had injury issues, but they're having that. They were passed up by the the Buffalo Blue Jays.
Yes, get that right, Buffalo.
And when I remember, I mentioned the song Train Kept a Rolling early on. It could be applied to the Tampa Bay Rays, who have a pretty decent lead in the American League East. And right now, I think they're the number 1 seed.
They are. And Buffalo is 4.5 games back of Tampa Bay. But they've hopped over the Yankees. The Yankees are 6.5 games. So, yeah, maybe they're just not, don't care.
The Buffalo team has been helped greatly on the mound by a former Dodger. And no, it's not their new addition because he didn't help them. Buffalo Strip.
He looked the same.
Oh, I hate myself now.
Maybe you need to be traded.
Yeah, I think maybe. Hyun-Jin Ryu has become their ace. I wonder now if Andrew Friedman thinks maybe I shouldn't have let him go because I could really use somebody like him. Because I think a lot of the reason why he was let go to do his own thing or not re-signed could have been a money thing. But I also think that they weren't sure that last season wasn't just a one-season thing. He hadn't truly proven year after year. He showed flashes, but then he was injured a lot. And last year with a full season, we did see some arm fatigue when we got into September. Now he comes out and he took over. His defense was making errors, and he was overcoming the errors in a win that he had just last week. The rest of the pitching staff isn't great. It's okay, but he's really the guy who's carrying it all. And even their offense isn't as great as it's going to be with Bo Bichette, who has been leading the team mostly. Brandon Lau's been there. We talked about him last week. Vladdy Jr. has his moments. Kevin Biggio, son of a Hall of Famer. He's been well, but overall, it's a whole team effort, and it's not just 1 or 2 guys who are jumping up and carrying everything. And Ryu is pacing that pitching staff and showing them how it's done. So
well, I think Ryu should have been a Dodger. I was not happy when he didn't sign, and he should have been signed based on the home run that he hit. He is Babe Ryu as a Dodger, but
right.
He went to Buffalo, and he's doing well there. But yeah, we really could use Babe back on the mound.
So now, yeah, he would definitely be helpful this season for sure. In the NL East, a couple things. 3 guys I don't think we've really talked about all this season. And we'll start with 2 guys who were in the same series with the Braves and the National. Let's start with Freddie Freeman, who did something he hadn't done in nearly 1,400 career games.
This will come as a surprise to all of you, as it did to me. Freddie Freeman never hit a grand slam until this series. And then not only did he hit his first grand slam, he hit another grand slam.
So
like 2 days
from
later.
0 to 2 in the same game. That 1,400 game. Nearly. I think it was 1,383 was the exact total. Pretty incredible. Now, on the other side of the ball from Freddie Freeman, a kid who started the year off with some issues and had to have like 1,000 COVID-19 tests.
Yes.
Before he could play. Juan Soto has an unreal slugging percentage. He's slugging at 758, which we told you slugging percentage takes into account all the hits. So a single is times 1, a double's times 2. So
it's
that
like
way,
your GPA.
Right. It's better. So when you're with that slugging percentage, if he's able to hold that for the season, he will rank up there in the top 10 all time with Barry Bonds, who's done it a couple times, the guy who's done it the most, Babe Ruth, and Lou Gehrig. And he would end up pushing Mark McGwire out of the top 10 in slugging percentage for a single season.
And Juan Soto leads the Nationals in home runs with 11. You mentioned his slugging percentage. His OPS is 1.211.
Which leads the league.
Yes. And he's only played 27 games.
Right. And maybe that's part of why he's able to hold these numbers up higher, because over a bigger sample size, they could drop down. I don't think so based on watching him play. And by the way, the OPS, if you're not sure what that is offensive production. And it is a combination of the on-base percentage, which counts every time you get on base, whether it's a walk or a hit or whatever reason they got you to base, that gives you the on-base percentage, plus your slugging percentage to give you an overall look at your offensive stat. And that Juan Soto leads the league in both slugging and OPS.
Now, I will say with Juan Soto, he is day-to-day with left elbow soreness. So hopefully for the Nationals, he heals up quickly and can continue his stellar performance.
I don't think it's going to help the Nationals.
No.
So this is just going to be a good, fun season for Juan Soto and his numbers.
That's it.
Because the Nationals are at the bottom, just about not playing well, bad. They've won maybe 12 games, I think, this season. So
one of my things that I thought was funny over this last week in the East, in the NL East, is the Phillies. Not that the Phillies are funny, but a funny incident happened where Bryce Harper was running back onto the field to play, and he had some issues with the umpire when he was at bat. And didn't say anything.
Foul fair call.
That's right, a foul fair call, thank you. So he decides, I'm going to say something to the umpire on my way out to the outfield. He gets ejected. He comes back the next day and has cut his hair. I've never seen that type of response to being ejected, but maybe he had time while he was in the clubhouse to think about a new hairstyle. So
it made me sad. I thought his hair looked good.
It does. It's kind of reminds me of Buster Brown. Now his hair.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you've seen it, but it just in the pictures, the angles I've seen, he's got a Buster Brown haircut.
I haven't seen. I knew that his hair was cut, but I didn't see what it looked like. I saw that story about him getting thrown out and the whole thing, and you should go find it if you're interested in it, because it was like the back and forth was kind of weird. It's hard to believe. It's hard to get thrown out of a baseball game. Well, usually. This season, it's not.
No, this season
you sneezed after a bad call. See, that's what I think's going on with the umpires. I think the umpires know they're making bad calls and they're self-conscious about it. So when you say something, they just automatically throw you out, because it's like, hey, stop calling out my inadequacies, my poor balls and strike calls. Talking about balls and strikes and great pitchers, there's a guy we haven't talked about this season, mostly because whenever we talk about his team, we're making fun of them, or that they would be the next team in line to have a COVID problem, which they were. And this guy's he's on that same train. It keeps it rolling. Jacob deGrom. And I have one question. Early on in his career, I remember people referred to him as Jake deGrom. And over the last few years, Nobody calls him that. I only hear Jacob deGrom. Did he say, I'm so good that you need to address me more formally, Mr. deGrom, or at least Jacob?
I know people like that.
My name's not Jake. My name is Jacob.
I have a brother-in-law like that. He's Bobby to everyone else, but to the family. But to the world, he's Robert.
Robert. Anyway, deGrom, it's the same thing. I never hear anybody call Anthony Rendon Tony, but
That's
I find myself going, yeah, Tony, keep it up. Way to go. And then I think, would he be mad at me now if he knew I called him Tony?
Well, how would Jock feel about us calling him Jocelyn?
I really want at some point to talk to him about that and ask him, tell him, this is what we do. He seems like somebody who could laugh about it, because he and Kike both seem to have similar. Kike's more of a silly type character, but yeah, or I could even say, I could use one of Jocelyn's favorite words and go, hey, we call you man-threaded Jocelyn.
That might set better.
Anyway, back to Jake deGrom.
Yes.
Jacob deGrom.
Jacob.
He's got a 1.8 WAR, which puts him up towards the top of the pitchers. 70 strikeouts, which leads the National League, even ahead of Trevor Bauer and those guys who started off so strong. His WHIP is under 1, 0.875, 1.69 ERA with a 2 FIP. So he's tearing it up. He's brilliant, great. And since 2018, his ERA since 2018 is 2.01.
In his last game, he had 12 strikeouts against the Phillies, 35 swing and misses. 35.
That was pretty incredible.
And I think with Jacob deGrom, because his team, like you said, they're the Mets and I don't know what they're doing on the field, he does fly under the radar because you're looking at what are the Mets doing offensively. Oh, they blew a 7-run lead. And then you have somebody like Jacob deGrom coming and being the bright spot in that rotation, because Noah Syndergaard, he's out, right, for the season.
Yep.
So he's it, Jacob.
There's a lawyer here, like a personal injury lawyer, and he's his commercials are called Jacob. And that's what the Mets have to do. They have to call Jacob all the time.
All the time.
So the Central is pretty much the same as it ever was, to quote the Talking Heads, David Byrne. White Sox, Indians, and Twins, just like last week, all battling it out. I expect to see some shuffling. It's to be a little, what is that? They call it 3-card Monte, or the shell game, or the hats like they do at the game, where's the ball under. I think that's what's going to be at the end of the season. We're going to be watching the hat game, and the ball will be under who wins the Central will be under one of those 3 hats. And we'll just have to guess, because that's the way it's looking right now.
They've got that guy in Cleveland, little known, Shane Bieber, 10 Ks in his last start.
And it was his shortest start, only 4 innings or so, and he still struck out 10 people. He could have, if he pitches 4, I think it was 4 and 2/3, but if he only pitches 4 innings, that's 12 outs. He struck out 10 of the 12 outs. It's incredible what he's doing. He started off last year, and everybody there's wearing Bieber Fever shirts because they're believers.
Yeah, but not Justin.
He became the more famous Bieber, at least
he did,
in my mind.
Me too. He leads the majors with 94 strikeouts. He has a 7-0 record. He has a 1.25 ERA. He is making a huge case, maybe a shut case for Cy Young Award.
MVP.
And MVP. Multiple.
Cy Young, I think, is almost a given right now.
Yeah.
barring a breakdown, but MVP. He really is, especially on a team that has, as we talked about last week, little to no offense. So the other night, the leaders in the Central played each other. In fact, watched the Sunday night game on ESPN, and mostly was able to tune out A-Fraud and watch the game. One of the fun things they did during the game, though, in a game that the Cubs lost, the Cardinals gained a little ground on them. Paul DeJong, the shortstop for the Cardinals, was mic'd up, and they were actually talking to him while he was on the field. And he made a couple of plays while he was on there. Earlier in the game, they were trying to talk. You know how they'll have a manager on headset. They're starting to talk to him, and he goes, something happened, and the Cardinals manager, what's his name, Stilt, and he said, he goes, hey, I got to go manage, took it off and ran off to go manage, which I don't know why. It's Dave Roberts can do it with the team up, but maybe the Dodgers are more on cruise control compared to the Cardinals.
Maybe. Well, and he had taken like one question.
Right.
And like, I got to go.
Paul DeJong talking, the one thing that I found funny through all that is they asked him about when they were on quarantine in Milwaukee. And apparently the hotel they stay in Milwaukee is known to be haunted.
I have heard.
And Yadier Molina swears by the fact that it's haunted, has stories about it. The reason that came up, though, is because Paul DeJong said, because they asked him about this story they heard, all the players are stuck there. And in order to get some baseball work in, because they couldn't leave their rooms, they would take and set the mattresses up against the wall and then throw at the mattresses. And they said that must have been freaking people out because they're hearing all these balls popping on a mattress in a haunted hotel.
That's awesome.
They said, yeah, there's been some weird stuff happen there, but we love that hotel. And that was one of the coolest moments. I'm not always a big fan of them miking them up while they're playing and talking to them during the game, because I feel like at one point they'd been talking to him and then there was a ball hit to him and he stopped everything and played it, but he made a bad throw because he had a problem getting it out. And I wonder if his head wasn't there. I've seen that play a lot by people who weren't mic'd up, but that kind of threw me off. But that was a fun part of that game. You know, little things like that I think are good for the game and to get guys coming back, get people coming into the game, because there was some fun to that, especially with that story about the hotel. All right, before we wrap things up, let's go to the West. Take a quick look at the week. We had the Padres and the A's, with the Padres taking 2 of 3 there. Of course, they also got beat by the Angels 1 game of the 2. So they split a series, won a series. Coming up in this week, the A's and the Asterix will play those 5 games we talked about, and then the Asterix will be at the Ravine for a couple. Rockies and Padres coming up, Mariners and Giants this week as well. And as we talk about the Giants, they did something to the Rockies that the Dodgers didn't do. And it's not win a game, because the Dodgers did beat the Rockies in at least 1 game of their series. But the Giants went crazy. In fact, the Rockies, who have a pretty active Twitter account and like to troll other teams, had to come out and say something about what happened to them in Denver.
Yeah, the Blake Street Bombers, as they are known in Denver, were blown out at home against the Giants 23-5. And the Rockies Twitter, they always try to be positive on their losses, try to see, as I do, the silver lining. But this time, there was no silver lining. They just came out and said, it was horrible, we lost, the end. So, but the bad thing is it happened at home. It wasn't even, like in San Francisco. That'd be one thing.
A road blowout
is in
is
home.
Different. Right. And the Giants, we were talking about unwritten rules. I'm surprised this didn't get more play. The Giants with an 18-2 lead, challenged a call at first base.
They did. Totally going against everything.
An unwritten rule when you're getting beat like that? Why challenge it? Who cares? Just go on. Maybe they thought that the Rockies probably could have gone on a run compared to being in San Francisco. So that's one thing. The Giants sent 59 hitters to the plate, 27 hits. And of those, only 2 of them were home runs. You would think there'd be more home runs in a 23-run game. 5 doubles, 1 triple, 5 walks. They only struck out 6 times of those 59 plate appearances. Team batting average for the game was .519. So more than half the players that came up got a hit. Of the times that they came up, more than half the at-bats got a hit. A couple of the pitchers from the Rockies, and they went through many, John Gray and Jairo Diaz, each gave up 7 runs. Every pitcher for the Rockies that day gave up at least 1. Most gave up 2, and then those 2 guys gave up the 7. It was embarrassing.
It really was. And Alex Dickerson for the Giants, he had 3 home runs in that game, 5 extra base hits. Just crazy. Yes.
This was the last time that the Giants have had such a offensive showing since like 1990.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Prodigious. And they are in the playoff conversation because of the way they've been playing recently, and that doesn't help. Things like that, that's good for your team confidence as long as it doesn't become overconfidence. And they're right there on the edge. And right now, I look like a big dummy because the Rockies, the last time I had checked at one point, they're 20-20 at the end of the weekend. We're right there at the bottom around 8, the 8th seed. So, and before we close up shop today, when you look at the overall standings, not just the divisions, but the overall, like in the NL West, it's the Dodgers, the Padres, and then the 2 division leaders for the East and the Central in the Braves and the Cubs. Then Philly, who's came from last place, so anything is possible because the Angels swept the Asterix 4 games, so anything's possible. But when you look at it, the top 8 teams, why instead of saying the 3 division winners, then the 3 second place teams, and then 2 wild cards, why not do the top 8 teams by win-loss records and have it that way just for this season instead of doing that? The other way just seems like somebody's going to get a seeding doesn't rate with what their record is.
Right.
The Padres right now are the second team in the West. I mean, in the National League. They should get the number 2 seed. And then that way you set up the possibility of your 2 best teams playing for the championship, even if it means it's 2 teams from the same division, which can happen anyway this season.
Yeah, I think looking at the Central is a good indication of that.
They are all bunched up together, and we don't know. And that's in both sides of things. A lot can happen. We still have around 20 games. Some have a couple more, some have a couple less, but around that. And really, in my opinion, only the Dodgers have solidified their spot, and the Padres, I think, are the 2 teams that have firmly solidified their spots. The Rays are on their way. They would probably be the 3rd team.
Yeah, I think the Rays, I mean, they've got the best record in the AL right now. I think they've got 28 wins, so they definitely have put a mark on where they need to be. But I wanted to ask you, because we are talking, we're talking about around the league, but we're talking about the West. What was it you that was flying a drone over Dodger Stadium?
No, that wasn't me.
Oh.
Now,
all right.
I would have thought about doing that, but I can watch them on TV. I'm not blacked out.
So maybe that's what it was.
So that wasn't it. I think that I go with the widely held belief that the Asterix, who were just down in Anaheim, sent one of their spies up to see what they could do to get some information.
I was really hoping for the jetpack guy.
That would have been more fun. Jetpack guy, fly in, land on,
Right on the mound.
throw 2 scoreless innings,
We needed it.
and maybe get a win, get 2 wins of 3 games versus the Rockies. And maybe have swept the Diamondbacks and the Rockies so they could be more like the Angels, who swept the Asterix 4 games. And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Next week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, we consult the stars and spin the wheel to update our playoff picks.
Do you think Josh Fields has any favorite umpires or astrologers? Oh, and don't forget, the Angels swept the Asterix.
You're out!